Would please stand and join us as we say the pledge and have an invocation. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
Bow your head. Lord, we just thank you for the opportunities to come before our local government and make decisions that will affect us all. Please help us make those decisions correct so that we the outcome.
Amen. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. First item is approval of the minutes. And I have a question, Mac, on the minutes. There's none on the agenda, as I see it, on the county's website attached. We used to have them as part of the package. Is there just not any ready to go?
We don't have them ready to go yet.
Okay, that's
the person that normally takes those minutes has been out on extended medical leave, and we got some other folks filling in.
Okay.
We should have some for you at the very next meeting.
Not a problem. I was just curious because I didn't see any there. Okay. Next is announcements. If you would, if you haven't done so already, please silence your phones or turn them off. That way we're not interrupted a whole lot of times unnecessarily during the meeting. It's probably not necessary tonight, but I'm going to go ahead and say it, that we will have a 9 o'clock time certain end to the meeting. So any items that are not completed by 9 o'clock will be moved to the next agenda. That's all I got. Mac, you got anything?
No, sir. We're ready to go.
Rachel, you have an extra pen? We got one here. Without Karen here, someone. Thank you. All right, let's get going.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matt Carpenter for the Planning Department, CARPENTER. The first item under our legislative section of the agenda tonight is the Land Development Code update. This is Chapter 1 of a series of updates. I'm sure you're aware that we have had a challenge to the comprehensive plan. That challenge has been withdrawn due to a settlement agreement and the adoption of some remedial amendments to the comprehensive plan. We're now in the process of taking what was adopted December 12th in the Land Development Code and going back through those things and doing sort of a tune-up. Since the Land Development Code was significantly rearranged, we want to make sure that it is as good as it can be. And we've got some typographical areas that we've corrected, some formatting, and then we've got some other additional changes that we are recommending that will help expedite the review process for things such as temporary power poles that are required after a development order has been issued, and temporary trailers, or the construction trailers that have been historically separately permitted after a development order has been issued. We were recommending that those kinds of things be included in the submittal checklist for the development order so that they can be incorporated into the development order itself and not require a separate permit and additional delay for the applicant once their development order has been approved. Kristen Shell has been reviewing this and has updated Chapter 1, and I'm going to ask her to go through what those changes are.
Okay.
Good evening. We are doing this as staff, so I wanted to tell you we're not working with the Matrix anymore because that project's completed. So anything that's wrong here is my fault. So 100%. So we're trying to go in, like Mike said, now and do some tweaking just to the code. Hopefully not to the comp plan, but just to the code. We'll have Chapter 2 next month, and we've got some zoning terminology changes. We're trying to get everything into a standard classification scheme. So just a little bit more refinement. There are some substantive changes here. We're adding the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. That wasn't in there before. We've made some clarifications to who is a voting member of the TRC to reflect its current composition. We made some cleanup changes for the less than minor language. This really just reflects current operational procedure. We added all of the notice requirements, which weren't really in there before, in a clear way, because we want not only the applicants but the public to be able to know what notice they can expect and what notice is required for each item that we have. We didn't make any changes to that notice, operational changes or changes to what notice is required or what have you, but we did enumerate it in here so it's real clear for everybody. Made some substantive changes to the developer's assurance and guarantee of completion of improvements. Now, it deletes surety bond and developer lender county agreement, and that was really a financial thing where we're having a hard time collecting those surety bonds or making sure that those were good. And this is in case that the developer doesn't actually install the improvements as committed to in the development order process. There's some other changes here related to the technology change we had with the online permitting. I'm not going to go into those. I don't think they're too important. And we added the right-of-way abandonment process because that just wasn't, even though we were doing a process, it wasn't codified. So if anybody has any questions to any of those, let me know, and we'll see you next month for Chapter 2, which is going to be there's some substantive rearranging in there of land uses, so that'll be one that we'll talk about a little bit more.
That Affordable Housing Board, is that something I understand it's required by statute? Is that correct?
Yes, the county has to have that board. We have the board, but we didn't have them in the code. Yeah, so they do meet, and they are in charge of the SHIP program, which is a grant that it comes through the West Florida Regional Planning Council that we use. So we have to have that board, and the makeup of that board is statutorily defined.
Anybody else have any questions of staff on this? You got an easy crowd tonight, Kristen.
Yay, good, like that.
Did anybody in the audience have any questions? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Fred Tricker, Tricker. And I just wanted, first of all, to commend Planning Department. They did a good job on this document, putting out something that was really clear. You could see exactly where the changes were, and the notes that went with it were just very helpful to review it. So good job.
Thank you, Mr. Tricker.
A couple of comments. One is on the abandonment procedures. And I've heard Matt Carpenter speak previously about the policy on abandonments, that we really don't want to give them out unless the circumstances are really extreme. And I forget exactly the wording that he used for it, but the language that's in there, I think might could be tightened up a little bit, made a little bit tougher, and make that clear that we really don't want to give abandonments unless there's a really good reason for it. So that's a recommendation. The other thing, and we've talked about this before, is it'd be really nice. I don't know if anywhere you can go out and get a full version of the land development code in PDF format. It'd be really nice if planning could put out a version of the LDC before the changes and then another one after, so that you can see what the land development code, exactly what it was as of a specific date. So that's something that I think would be very, very helpful to everybody.
So you're talking about every time there's a change?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yeah. So so in other words, if you want to see what the land development code was on May the 3rd, you can go out and find out exactly what it was, because otherwise it's really difficult to do that.
Yes, it is.
And it's not hard to put it out. I mean, I assume you've got the document somewhere in
Right.
Word format. Just publish a complete volume every time there's a change.
I would say I'd say substantive changes. I think if it's not a substantive change, you can probably just print or make available the change itself.
Sure.
Easier. I think
Yeah.
if you start getting into having to redo it every time there's any kind of change, it might get complicated, but I certainly understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Agree with you at all.
Thank you.
And I just want to say, I appreciate, and I know that you have been very involved in this process, and, you know, that's a good thing. I mean, I appreciate your involvement in making sure that things are done as they should be and kind of keeping an eye on stuff. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll close public comments. Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion. We have a second. We have a motion and a second. Did you get those? Yeah. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. The second item is the Pearson Small Scale Amendment. This is a request to approve by ordinance. It's been reviewed by Bob Baronti, and I'm going to ask him to introduce it for us.
Good evening. This is a small-scale amendment application submitted by Emerald Coast Associates on behalf of David Pearson, requesting to change the future land use from public facilities and institutional to residential, and change the official zoning map district from residential preservation and public facilities to neighborhood infill on 0.68 acres of land. The parcel numbers are inside of your staff report. There are no outstanding comments. It would comply with the comprehensive plan and the land development code. Basically, there was a county-owned water well there that hasn't been taken out of service for a number of years. Basically, the applicant is just asking to make that residential. It's roughly the same density. It's compatible to the area, so it'll just be residential. Are there any questions for me?
Bob, and the lot sizes, once this is done, would be compatible with the neighboring lots?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Any other questions?
Commissioners?
The agent is here, and I'd like to ask you to enter the staff report in the record.
Accepted.
Good evening, Commissioners. Dean Burgess with Emerald Coast Associates. I think Bob did a good job of, I have been sworn. Bob did a good job of introducing the
You don't have to
project.
be,
Right, that's true. So I haven't been sworn. Did a good job of explaining the request and the reason for the request. Currently, the single-family lot that is before you is RPA, which is intended to be the result of a plat, and that lot was a leftover piece, is not included in any plat. And of course, the public facilities is a decommissioned regional utilities water well site. It would make both of these infill and residential in keeping with the surrounding area. So if there's any questions that I could answer from the board, I'd be happy to do so.
Commissioner? I have a question as far as decommissioning a well site like that. What are they required to do? I mean, do they have to remove all the equipment?
They
what's
remove
required?
all their pump equipment, and I believe they're required to grout the well.
Okay. All right, anybody else? Well,
Thank you.
thank you, sir. We'll open public comments. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak on this item? Yes, sir.
Planning Commission. My name is Eddie Upchurch. I'm across the street at 179 Seagrove Village Drive. That's UPCHURCH. I have no contention with what they filed. It's contingent with what the neighborhood has done now for 10 years, dividing big lots to small lots. My concern and my neighbor's concern are the easement that goes down the east side of that property from Seagrove Village Drive to East Grove. It's I sent a letter in. It was filed by Q McGee in 1985 in the master plat of the subdivision, and so recognized on your recent survey that Pearson SSA actually provided, or the county did the survey and sent it out, sent me a letter and the survey. So that's really our main concern, that easement stays open. It's actually fenced off now. It's approximately 5 feet wide, the length of Mr. Pearson's property.
Is the easement actually on that property, or? I'm
Yeah,
not showing an easement on what we have.
it was on the most recent survey. Now, I don't have that with me, but it was a letter sent to me with a letter from the Planning Commission with the survey and some other items that was sent out probably 2 weeks ago.
Anybody seen that? I'm missing it. Bob, is that in the package, or?
No, sir, that was my fault.
Okay.
I apologize.
Not familiar with an easement on the east side. I can volunteer response.
Please do.
The request for land use change and for zoning change would not alter any easements on the property. I can offer that on the eastern side of the property, there is a 5-foot area that was fenced off. There is no corresponding easement that I can find. We did not do the survey, but that I can see in the title work that corresponds to that fenced area. But I can say that this land use change and zoning change will not alter any easements on the property.
Okay. Mr. Upchurch, is that satisfactory?
I was just seeing if I have, I apologize for not bringing the boundaries survey. It says the topographical survey was revised date of May the 6th, 2019, denotes a 5-foot easement running north and south along the eastern boundary of parcel 1. The existence and validity of the easement is further established in the plat of Seagrove Village, 6th edition, recorded in Plat Book 7, page 9 in the public records of Walton County.
Yeah, if he's saying that this is not going to change any easements,
Great.
is that okay?
That's okay with me.
All right.
All right. The only other question I did have was, what is the current watershed policy of Walton County? Because, you know, the houses are getting larger and larger, 6,000 to 7,000 square feet. And is there a formal watershed plan in place?
Mr. Carpenter, you want to answer that?
We do have stormwater requirements for all single-family developments now. Essentially, you have to contain your stormwater on your own site or convey it to your subdivision's master stormwater plan. But each individual house now requires a stormwater plan of some form. It may have been approved with the subdivision approval. If not, it's required to be installed with the house construction.
Did that answer your question, sir? Okay. Kirk McConnell? You don't want to talk? Okay. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comments. Commissioners?
What was that easement for? Utilities? Pedestrian.
I speak again.
Yeah,
Originally developed that particular side of the old Seagrove, he put in dedicated walkways up to East Grove and, onto the beach. And that was his intent, to give the neighborhood walkways to the 30A area. There's also an easement, I don't know if it's recorded, I've never researched it, down the street about halfway of Seagrove Village Drive. Alex Rice and Tom Hydell just built a couple of houses there, and there's a pedestrian easement there also.
Okay.
So that was the purpose, back in the 80s. when
Just clearing that up.
thank you. All right, no further questions? We have a motion?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion?
Second.
Second? Lee?
Michael Harbin to approve.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. This brings us to item number 3 on our legislative item agenda, the Azland Waste Services Large-Scale Amendment. It's a request to approve by ordinance. This has been reviewed by Bob Baronti. I'll ask Bob to briefly.
I believe we have one, he has to,
Yes, you have one letter, and also you should have the environmental review that cites that there's no issues. I got it a little later than I normally would. Basically, this parcel is being asked to comply with the new future land use code of extraction. It is currently a large-scale agricultural state residential. It is asking to be changed from large-scale agricultural and state residential to extractive uses, and it changed the official zoning map district from large-scale agricultural to state residential to extractive uses on 330.60 plus or minus acres. You see the parcel numbers in the staff report, and this project is on Rock Hill Road. It meets the comprehensive plan requirements. It doesn't affect any of the surrounding, that the current special exception that grants the extractive use any different than what it would be today. The applicant is here to speak. Do you have any questions for me?
well, I understand this is basically just bringing the
Correct.
zoning into what's currently happening.
Correct. Well, it's to bring the zoning current, but if this is denied, it wouldn't stop the use because that's been permitted by special exception.
Right.
The applicant is trying to bring in the use to make it compatible with the new zoning district that wasn't there previously to use that. The applicant, it is Mr. Perry, and
That's why he recused himself on this. He can't participate.
I will turn it over to his representative. And can I get the staff report entered in the record, please? Thank you.
Scott Jenkins with Jenkins Engineering. I think Bob had a pretty good explanation for that. I'll just run through some particulars real quick. It is about 330 acres. You can see just from a location standpoint, it's just on the north side of Rock Hill Road here, just to the east of 331, north of 24. You know where Rock Hill Road is. The existing future land use is large-scale agricultural, and a small portion of it is estate residential along Rock Hill Road. The request is to change it from those future land uses to a future land use of extractive uses and a zoning district of extractive uses. The site was permitted and is operating as a borrow pit back in 2008. They got a special exception. The reason they're going through this now is because the extractive uses, land use or zoning category didn't exist. So they had to go through that process to get a special exception back then. So that's really the reason for this request. It's just to align the use with the zoning categories. There's no proposed changes. There's no proposed additions. There's no proposed project. It's really just an alignment of the zoning with the use because it now exists and it's available to them. I'll be happy to answer any questions you guys have, but.
Commissioners, any questions? Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Anybody from the audience have anything to say on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comments. Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. The next items are all quasi judicial, so we'll need to swear them in.
Do you all swear affirm the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
That's funny. That was all the right side of the room, and nobody on the left-hand side of the room stood up. It's almost like a wedding. You know that?
Attorneys over there.
Wow.
The bride and the groom.
Yeah, I was just trying to, that's very unusual. Plan that ahead of time, I'm sure. Mr. Carpenter, it's all yours.
Thank you, sir. This brings us to item number 4 on our agenda tonight. This is Watercolor Phase 5. It's a major development application reviewed by Renee Bradley, and I'll ask her to introduce this for us.
Good evening.
Hey, I'm going to ask you to just pause for just a minute while this thing loads on my computer. For some reason, it's taking a long time.
Okay. Just
I don't know if
pretty.
anybody else is having trouble or not.
Please share that.
Okay, you go ahead.
Okay, this is a major development order application submitted by Dewberry on behalf of the St. Joe Company, requesting approval to develop 41 single-family lots on approximately 23 acres with a future land use of mixed use and a zoning of coastal center. Project's located approximately 340 feet from County Road 395 and West Forest Lake intersection, and is on the north side of the road and is identified by the parcel numbers in your packet. Staff doesn't have any outstanding comments. All comments for the Land Development Code and Comprehensive Plan have been met at this time, and I'll be glad to answer any questions for the board.
Commissioners, have any questions of staff yet? Just be ready.
Applicant is here. We would like for the applicant to explain the stormwater for this project for the board.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't have anything, Mac. Do we have a?
It should be a handout.
Yes, sir. We do have a written request to continue this from Mr. Shipman on behalf of the Watercolor Homeowners Association.
It's number 4.
If you don't
I
have
do
it.
see it, Mr. Shipman. I apologize for that. I just missed it.
Okay, because I brought my own if y'all didn't get it.
I've got it. I just, if you would, just staff in the future, just if we got something like that that's not in our package, please remind us. Okay. All right, Mr. Shipman.
Okay, and the concern, we are not here opposing Phase 5. The HOA supports the development of Phase 5. The only aspect that we are here on, that we ask for continuance, is that we were entitled to submit comment regarding the stormwater plan. They did appear at a meeting on April 22nd of the Board of Watercolor, St. Joe did, where they provided 3 sheets concerning the stormwater plan, which happened to be the same 3 sheets that were changed last week in their submittal. And of particular importance is the changing of the dynamic or the size of the stormwater pond. We've hired an engineer to do our review. There was some difficulty in getting an engineer because nearly every engineer in this area does work for St. Joe. We've got an engineer in Pensacola. All we're asking is for a continuance for 1 meeting to allow our engineer, who's now got the documents that were submitted last week, to be able to review and provide comment on stormwater calculations. The reason we're concerned about this is 2 phases of watercolor, and the HOA is the entity that will be operating this stormwater system once the development is done. Phase 2 has significant stormwater problems, not because we're not accusing them of not building the stormwater system as was approved. It's just that system doesn't work. And Phase 4 had significant stormwater problems. Again, it was built in compliance with the system that was approved. But the HOA, after turnover, had to go in and do substantial work to correct deficiencies in handling the stormwater volume. In reviewing the staff report, one of the particular concerns, the staff itself said, that the stormwater system, they make an emphasis.
Mr. Shipman, I think you may have hit the button, turn your mic off.
Oh, sorry.
All right.
I'm usually accused of talking loud anyway.
I can hear you, but them guys back there may not be able to.
The staff evaluation of the stormwater system that was submitted talks about the fact that the lots themselves are such a size, which most watercolor lots are, that there would be very little vegetation left on the lots. But then at the same time, they talk about the stormwater design requiring that as much of the existing vegetation will be kept as possible to reduce the size of the area that is being altered. All we're asking for is to allow our engineer the time, which we're willing to be held accountable that it's going to have to be done before the next meeting, to allow our engineer to review their stormwater plan as amended last week to provide comment as to whether or not we think it's adequate, because the HOA is the entity that's going to have to maintain this stormwater system, and we've already had problems with 2 other stormwater systems that were built in compliance with the way they were approved.
And you're representing the HOA.
Yes, sir.
They're wanting to make sure that they can actually maintain
The stormwater system. But I want to be clear, we do support Phase 5 being approved.
Okay.
We just want to be able to comment on the stormwater system. So we're asking for a delay of 1 meeting.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Applicant, do you have a comment on that?
Yes, I do. My name's Jeff Britton. I'm an engineer with Dewberry. That really leads into what Renee wanted me to talk about tonight, is the stormwater design.
Let me ask you real quick.
Sure.
Was there a change made last week to the system?
There was some changes made to the plan, but I don't believe that we tweaked the system last week. I think we already had the model. The last... We did not change the pond last week.
Well, let's just get past that before we get into the whole presentation, okay?
Let me give a quick overview of the differences between this phase and previous phases, and how this proposed approach should help alleviate some of the concerns that are showing up in previous phases.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure. Understood. We don't agree with the continuance. we'd like for it to move forward. There is no timeline review on an independent third-party review. That can be reviewed at any point in time to determine if the design has issues or if it does in fact meet the current standards. And so we've reviewed it internally. There's been two stormwater models have been performed. My firm did the site model for the pond to demonstrate that it's compliant with state and local standards. But we've also had to do a base flood elevation study out there because of the presence of flood zones. And that study encompasses the entire basin, a couple hundred acres, not just our site and the immediate surrounding areas. So both models provide the same results.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
We're talking about the vegetation, the amount of vegetation. Could there be a concern with that?
Could there? I mean, it depends on the storm event. My response per standards is no.
I understand what you're saying, and I understand what the standard is. My question is, because there's been a lot of water issues in South Walton County as far as flooding. And I think that if we can, I don't know if it's right to say make people feel better or actually be able to prove to them they have a right to feel better, that may not be a bad thing. To me, that's not unreasonable.
And I hear what you're saying, and I'm fine with a third-party review. It's a free QA/QC for me, but it shouldn't slow down the development order process because I don't think there's anything in the LDR. And somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but there's nothing in the LDR that would allow a third-party review to slow down a development order approval process.
We're not. Yeah, I mean, that's a little bit different than a typical third party, I think. I mean, do you see that? I mean, because they have to live with what you do.
Correct. And we've had two agencies right now review what we're proposing and say that it meets current standards. And there's a huge difference between what we're doing today and what was done in previous phases. Previous phases, you didn't have to do anything for attenuation, meaning that you didn't have to do anything to control your discharge. All you had to do is provide treatment. Everything else you could let go. What we have to do today under current local and state standards is make sure that our pre-development discharge rates are less than our post-development discharge rates.
Let me ask you another question.
Sure.
We could go on talking about what that is all day.
Right.
What is a 30-day delay in the process going to do to you as a developer?
It's 30 days less we can't begin work, 30 days less we can't get the units to the market. I mean, it could be the difference between, depending on if there's an upcoming recession, it could be the difference between the project working and the project not.
Well, yeah, I think I got to tell you, in my mind, if there's a question between the way you have to operate, especially if they're already represented by council. I'd much prefer to kick down the road live and have the opportunity. Because what we don't have is a conflict. What we may have down the road is a conflict.
Are you making that in the form of a motion?
I make the motion that we kick down the road for 30 days.
Well, not necessarily 30 days, but to the next planning.
That's fine.
We-
Clean it up.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Is there any questions on the motion?
Now, does this apply to just four, or does it also apply to 4 and 5? Just, okay, I'm sorry, I was making sure I was.
Yeah.
All we're asking is to be able to have provide comment. I don't even know if we're going to disagree. We want the opportunity to provide comment, and St. Joe directly solicited the comment from us. So I think they're not. Argue that they don't want it.
Well, we have a motion on the table, so Matt.
Chairman, could you advise everyone not to speak over one another? We have closed captioning.
Okay.
It does not work when two people are talking at the same time.
Everybody hear Mr. Carpenter?
By yourself before you speak.
Okay.
And speak from the podium.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Any other questions on the motion? How about from the public? Any question on the motion?
I just had a couple of comments, if I could. Yes, my name's Bridget Precise. I'm with the St. Joe Company. We certainly understand the homeowner association's concern about wanting to understand what they will ultimately be accepting. I just wanted to point out too, though, that we've been in process now since the end of November on this of 2018. And I would respectfully request, we've met with the Homeowners Association multiple times. The project engineer has met with county staff multiple times. I've put together a timeline that kind of references this more as for information for you guys, that if you don't have it, I'd like to go ahead and submit it. And I would respectfully request that if you consider a continuance at this point in time, that we be allowed to move forward and still stay on the July County Commission for approval.
Okay, thank you. When's our next meeting?
7.
The 7th?
So that would keep them in line with this next meeting?
It would? Okay, so they'll be able to get on the July commission then. Okay. All right, we're going to close public comments. We have a motion on the table to continue to the next planning commission meeting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. That brings us to item number 5 on the quasi-judicial section of the agenda, the Watersound Origins Phase 5. Request to approve by final order. This has also been reviewed by Renee, and I'll ask her to introduce this for us.
Thank you, and again, I apologize about that continuance. This is request, it's a major development order application submitted by Innerlight Engineering Corporation on behalf of the Watersound Company LLC, requesting approval to construct 466 single-family residential lots on 404.45 acres with a future land use and zoning of Bay Walton Sector Plan Village Center. Projects located at the end of North Watersound Parkway, where Watersound Parkway and Pathway Drive intersect, and the parcels are ID'd by the parcel identification numbers in your packet. I'd like to enter the staff report into record, please.
Captain.
Staff doesn't have any outstanding comments on this. All technical comments have been responded to, and I'll be glad to answer any questions for the board.
Commissioners, have any questions of staff?
Thank you.
Is there somebody here with the applicant?
I apologize. I think David Smith is running late. My name's Bridget Precise. I'm with the St. Joe Company. If anybody has any specific questions, I'll see if I can address those. I should have said the Watersound Company. I apologize.
Okay, that's okay. I'm just trying to make sure that my computer hadn't loaded again. So they're all slow. What do y'all want to do? You want to wait, or you want to? Yes, we're going to need him for items 5 and 6, right? We're going to need Mr. Smith. Excuse me? Oh, he is? Okay, well, won't we just go out of order then and wait for Mr. Smith to get here? And move on to item number 6.
Watersound Origins Assisted Living Facilities, number 6. This is a major development order application submitted by Emerald Coast Associates on behalf of the Watersound Company, requesting approval to construct an adult assisted living facility consisting of 243,892 square feet on 16.17 acres. This project is in a zoning of Bay Walton Sector Plan Village Center, and the land use of the same. The project's located 0.3 miles north of the intersection of U.S. Highway 98 and Watersound Parkway, and is identified by the parcel number ID in your packet. We only had one outstanding comment on this project, and that was from staff about the height of the building. We had some concerns that the architectural feature on that was a little bit above the 50 feet limit, and the applicant has agreed that we'll work on getting that feature down before we get to the Board of County Commissioners. It appears the rest of the building meets the height requirements. Thank you. I'd also like to enter staff report into the record, please.
Accepted.
Thank you.
You're up, Mr. Burgess.
Evening, Commissioners. Dean Burgess with Emerald Coast Associates, and I have been sworn now. Renee did a good job introducing the project. The one item that was raised, I've spoken with the owner, and it is an architectural feature. Worst case, we can just remove that feature, and it does not alter the function of the roof or the functionality of the building. It's just aesthetic. We think we may be able to have some kind of feature to break the building up a little better. Just for your reference, what we're discussing are these little concrete pop-ups that you see. Here's a couple in the back, these little features here. And on the lower sections, they could stay. Worst case, the higher sections, we may have to remove them or shrink them down to be even with the roof, the mansard roof line. Most people think of an adult living facility in terms of units. This is based on square footage as a commercial facility, but it is 188 units. We agree the project meets parking and land development code and comprehensive plan requirements.
Curious, how many parking spots are there? My thing, they're just finally loaded, but.
We have 167 parking spaces. That's based on a parking study that the PUD allows for. It actually allows for up to a 75% reduction in parking based on a study. The developers of this project have done a number of adult living facility. So they compiled their data as far as required parking, as well as we had our traffic engineer look at ITE studies for adult living facilities, and actually our data was higher, substantially higher than the ITE data. We chose to limit our parking based on our study, which is the most conservative, and we still had 7 extra spaces. We've got 167 spaces available. So we feel that we'll have plenty of parking. We certainly meet ITE standards and nearly double the ITE requirement. If there's any other questions, be happy to answer them of the board.
Commissioners?
Thank you.
We have nobody who signed up to speak. Is there anybody who wishes to speak on this item? Hey, I think he didn't raise his hand. I mean, that's hard to believe. Yeah. Okay. All right. Commissioners, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Yeah, motion is a second. That motion includes the comment.
Yes.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
While we're waiting on that, Mac, if you don't mind, just so I'll say it, the way this is loading on our tablets now is worthless. Mine's
Still ain't got list
loads, and then it says file error, I can't see it. I'm glad I looked at it at home on the internet on my personal computer and looked at all the attachments before, but being able to refer back to it and look at it on this is, you just can't do it.
Let me say that I feel your pain because we're operating from the same Wi-Fi internet. just through that wall right there. And yes, sir, our present internet service is less than we need.
Is there a way to fix that, Mac?
I'm sure that there is, but it may be partially beyond our control. Certainly one of the things that we learned from our IT department this past week was the Intel chips running in our servers had identified a vulnerability. Microsoft did a patch for that. It decreased the speed of the chip by 40%. And IT is slowly rolling out the replacement patch for that's supposed to restore the speed, but we don't control how fast they actually implement that software upgrade.
Can we,
But
as a
we are
planning commission, give you direction to contact
I
them?
will
Because-
absolutely carry your message to them in the
Because
morning.
we depend on this to have these meetings.
Yes, sir.
And I've been waiting for 5 minutes for this thing to load.
And it may be that we have to go back to printing you a book temporarily. I really don't want to do that.
Don't either.
But you do need to be able to see the information in a timely manner, and your comments are absolutely on point and well taken. And I certainly apologize, but if I could make it run faster, I absolutely would, because it's driving our staff.
I figured it was out of your control, but.
Yeah, and it's just an issue that needs to be
No, I
addressed.
absolutely
Not ours,
appreciate your
too.
comments, and we will either hopefully have some improvement before the next meeting, or we will provide you a printed copy of the book well in advance. Because you do need to be able to access the information and to do your particular review before this particular meeting.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Did we have who we needed to, David hadn't got here yet?
The applicant's request to continue its own Watersound Phase 5 to come back to the next meeting.
Okay.
It's not quite ready to go, so if we could do that, we can move that one off the agenda, sir, and that's on me. I should have gotten you a memo on that one.
Okay.
Okay?
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Item number 5.
Number 5, Watersound Origins Phase 5. Okay. And that keeps us holding up and trying to load that one. Thank you.
Well, I finally got it loaded now, but we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion, any comments from the audience? Opposed, public comments. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Now you gotta wait till I can load this next one, Mr. Carpenter, okay?
Yes, sir. Just for clarification, that item is continued to
Planning
the next
Commission meeting.
Planning Commission meeting on July 11th at 4 p.m. in this location.
Okay.
If we could move to item number 7 on our agenda, this was the last item on our agenda tonight, the Chat Holly Townhomes, request approved by final order. It's been reviewed by Bob Baronti. I'll ask him to introduce it.
Got everything loaded?
No, I'm sure Mr. Perry, his is, I guess, better than mine, so.
You need to wait?
No, I'm okay. There we go.
We're good.
Good?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. This is a major development order application submitted by Emerald Coast Associates on behalf of Randy Weiss Homes Incorporated, requesting technical approval to construct 44 townhomes and conceptually approve 12 townhomes on 8.79 plus or minus acres. The project is located on the northwest corner of the intersection of Chat Holly Road and North Eden Park Drive, and is identified as the parcel number in your staff report. All comments have been addressed and meets the land development code in the comprehensive plan. The applicant is here to answer any questions. May you have any questions of me?
Any questions of staff?
Could I enter the staff report in the record, please?
Accepted.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to Mr. Burgess.
Thank you, Bob. Dean Burgess with Emerald Coast Associates. I have been sworn. Only thing I'd want to clarify on Bob's report was that this is a conceptual master plan with a detailed design of Phase 1, which is 44 townhomes. The 12 remaining townhomes for a total of 56 would be the second phase that has not been detailed designed. So.
Can I ask you a question then, just for clarification, make sure everybody understands why we're doing a conceptual on the other 12?
The other 12, first of all, the developer may or may not want to sell that off to another developer. It is entirely within an A flood zone, which obviously comes along with other design requirements. More than likely, a flood study will have to be done because it's an unnumbered A. So a base flood study will have to be done. And the thought process was see how these sell to see if that second phase is worth doing.
It also, I guess, locks in the density.
It would lock in 56 units total for the property, correct. If we wanted to do more than that, we'd have to come back to you.
Right, okay. I was just curious. Anybody else have any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, we'll open up public comments. Russ Aldridge. Okay. Kendall Shue. Did I get that name right? Okay. Were you sworn in, Kendall?
I am.
Okay.
I had a question about I noticed that the parking lot is backing up to the homes. I have a home directly behind Chet Hawley. I want to know how the lighting in that parking lot is going to affect all the homes back there. So I don't want lights blasting through my home in the middle of the night.
Want the lights pointed at your house?
No.
I can't imagine that. Mr. Burgess, can you answer that question? Is that your only question?
It is.
Okay.
And I may have to ask Ms. Shue if she is to the north of the property. Are you in the subdivision to the north?
Yes.
Okay. To the north, we don't have a parking lot. It's only our access drive. All parking is within the units and driveways. So the parking will actually be facing south, and she's to the north. So
is there a fence there?
There's a landscape buffer.
Okay.
Along the northern 10 feet, and their subdivision should also have a 10-foot buffer, so there should be 20 feet of landscaping between our drive aisle and their backyards. And once again, just to be clear, there is no parking facing north. All parking off of that northern
Are there
will be facing south.
Street lights or safety lights back there?
We do have, just minimal lighting for nighttime visibility and, any kind of, we don't have any bleed over across the property line, I'm sure.
No bleed over lighting?
Correct.
Okay.
Are those low lights or high lights? Do you know the height of those lights?
I don't have our lighting plan with us, but I believe the height of the pole doesn't exceed 12 feet. It's either 10 or 12 feet.
Is that
And
native?
they are directional lights.
In that landscape buffer, is that native vegetation or are y'all putting in something else?
We're going to utilize as much of the native vegetation as possible, but it does have supplemental plantings.
How high is that vegetation going to get? Because I don't know if if your directional lighting is pointed back toward the building, that's one thing. If it's pointed down, you could possibly get some bleed over a little bit. But if there's vegetation high enough, that should take care of it.
That's right. And I believe the minimum height for canopy trees is 6 feet in Walton County, and they'll get taller than that.
Okay. That's where they'll start at then.
Correct.
All right. Anybody else have anything on this item? Okay, we'll close public comments. Commissioners?
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Second.
Mr. Babcock, Mr. Barker. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and we will stand adjourned.
Go get a blizzard.
You know what?
We have had them go that long. There was other reasons back then for that.
Well, you know.
Oh, and another way you can handle
Parker, seconded by Mr. Babcock, and then, so the chair can announce it,
I should.
and that way it'll.
I need to get in the habit of doing that.
Yeah, and it's just practice.
Really, I think you did a good job already.
Oh, really?
You better win that.
I was gonna say the same thing to you.
You know that's wrong.